There are two different types of identity in Microsoft 365, cloud-only and hybrid. Whichever type of identity is best for you, your users need, at a minimum, a sign-in user account name and a password that Microsoft 365 can validate itself or have validated on its behalf by an identity provider. Your Microsoft 365 subscription includes an Azure Active Directory or Azure AD tenant, which has its own list of user accounts. These accounts and their properties are used by Microsoft 365 services such as Office 365, Microsoft Intune, and other SaaS apps for authentication, licensing, and authorization. Cloud-only identity. With cloud-only identity, user accounts and their passwords are stored only in Azure AD. This is the best choice when all your user accounts are cloud-based. When users sign in to Microsoft 365, they will be authenticated by Azure AD. Creating and managing your user accounts is done with tools such as the Microsoft 365 Admin Center or with Microsoft PowerShell. Hybrid identity. With hybrid identity, user accounts are stored both on-premises in Active Directory Domain Services or ADDS as well as in Azure AD. ADDS is the original and authoritative source for user accounts, while Azure AD is the synchronized set for user accounts, essentially a copy of the accounts in ADDS. Hybrid identity allows you to use your on-premises accounts for access to Microsoft 365 resources. Azure AD Connect, running on an on-premises server, synchronizes the accounts from ADDS to Azure AD. Those user accounts will only flow from ADDS to Azure AD. Accounts created in Azure AD do not get synchronized with ADDS. With hybrid identity, you must maintain user accounts in your ADDS using ADDS tools such as the Active Directory Administration Center or Microsoft PowerShell. Hybrid identity authentication. There are different ways to set up authentication for hybrid identity. There's managed authentication, in which Azure AD handles the authentication process for user sign-in, and federated authentication, in which the authentication process is redirected to another identity provider. Within managed authentication, there are two different options. The first type is password hash synchronization, or PHS, in which Azure AD Connect also synchronizes a hash of a hashed version of user account passwords. With PHS, Azure AD performs the authentication of user credentials because it can verify both the user account name and password. The second type of managed authentication is pass-through authentication, or PTA, where Azure AD Connect synchronizes the accounts but without hashed passwords. For PTA, Azure AD, with the help of an agent running on-premises, passes authentication credentials to ADDS, which performs the validation. With federated authentication, the accounts in Azure AD do not have the hashed passwords. Rather, Azure AD redirects users to a federated authentication infrastructure which uses ADDS to perform the authentication.